We should be live. Hold on. Stream is starting soon. Alright guys, if you have any questions kind of before we get started, go ahead and put them in chat and I can hopefully get them answered. Like I said, today we'll be using Blender, Substance, and Unreal. So if you want to do all of it, you will have to have those downloaded and installed. So. And hopefully everyone can hear me okay. Please let me know if you can, I guess. Alright, good. Good. We'll give people just a couple of minutes to trickle in. I guess I'll start and kind of show you guys what we're going to be doing. So basically we will be creating a simple chair here. We will be modeling it, UV unwrapping it, texturing it, and putting it in Unreal Engine for you to interact with. Well, by interact means walk around and head off collision and all that stuff. So, so we'll be doing the UV unwrapping in Blender, and that will take up a good amount of our time actually, since we'll be covering UV unwrapping. It can be difficult, especially to do it right, and we'll be showing kind of a few tips and tricks on getting that up and running. And in Unreal, we probably won't spend much time. So, and what we'll be doing is pretty similar to what you would do in Unity or any other game engine. So you might be able to use your preferred game engine if you have one to import it and get it set up with collision and all that. So, but we'll also be setting up the materials in Unreal using exported from Substance Painter, which will be different, can be very different for each and every game engine. So, all right, let's see, 10:01. We'll give people a couple more minutes to trickle in, and then we'll get started. Because when I did the test run for this to work out any of the bugs, I did notice that it took me almost an hour just to do the test run. So obviously, since I've done it once, it might go faster. But if people need me to slow down or have questions, then yeah, it might take longer. So. And I also downloaded the latest version of Blender 2.8 as of yesterday, so I don't know if there have been any major or minor changes since whenever you downloaded it, so just keep that in mind. All right, 3 more minutes, guys, then we'll start for real. Thing is, once we get started, it will be hard for anyone that has arrived late to kind of catch up. So that's the major thing. I want to give people time to come in. They can still model, whatever they want and follow the steps that way. It's just nice if everyone can model a chair and get that imported. And I think one change I made from the default Blender is that the spacebar brings up the search bar for me. I'm not sure if that's default or not, but I just prefer that. So that is what I'll be doing sometimes is for searching. So just be aware of that. And I am, using left click select. It's not what I'm used to, so a lot of times you'll see me try and right click select. So. All right, we're going to go ahead and just get started now. So basically, make sure you have Blender open, and we can delete, well, we can delete the camera at least since, okay, and let's reopen Blender since it wants to be a pain. You can delete the camera if you so desire. We don't really need that. I would keep the light, just I'll show you why later, but what we're going to be doing is, and I'll post this in the chat, I will be dumping that photo of the chair so that people can download that if they wish. It's just an IKEA chair, and it's in the Twitch batch chat. So, all right. So basically, A lot of times people would change this to like an image editor or something like that, and then you would say open an image in there. Oh, why is it not showing? Maybe it doesn't like it. But anyway, you could open that up and view it in there, something like that. But I think we're going to go ahead and I'll have that on my second screen, and you are welcome to have it on your second screen or just do Alt Tab on that. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with this cube here, and scaling is important for when you're importing it to a game engine. If you don't have the correct scale, it can be a kind of a big problem. So what I have, and this is something you can do if you wish, and you'd have to get your own copy of it, but I'll just throw it in chat as well. So I have the Unreal Mannequin right here, and this is just what I prefer to use. You can import this, and this is the game size of the character, so you can actually kind of figure out how large it is based on sizing appropriate to that. So the other thing you can do is you can look through the dimensions. I believe it's in here. Units, there we go, metric units, and you can see that this is 1 meter. But I usually prefer the Unreal Mannequin, and we can go ahead and I will post that Unreal Mannequin in Twitch Batch, and you can go ahead and import that as well. Come on. Alright, the mannequin has been uploaded. You can download that and import it in if you so desire. So it's very easy to scale things correctly then. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn on screencast keys again, because when we exited it out, it went away. So if we look at the chair that we have, it's pretty much just 4 square legs, so that looks fairly straightforward. So what we can do is kind of bring it here and look at it and say we can do a scale and scale Shift Z, and that will scale it on the other axes, and we can kind of just get the sizing correct. So then we can go tab into edit mode, and we can start going into face select and GZ, and we're kind of aiming for a little bit above the knees for the chair, since it's a little bit of a higher chair. So we'll probably end up with something like that, and we can always tweak it later if needed. So so this is a basic square leg, and then we can easily Shift D, right click G, Y, and then we can kind of drag that right out, and that's our second chair leg. And next we would need a flat surface, so we can go ahead and change it to grab our cursor. We can set it on any one of those, and then make sure we're in edit mode. That's the easiest way. Let's actually join these. Since we did duplicate an object, we'll have both of those. We'll hit Control J. That will go ahead and join. And then with our 3D cursor, we can select that, do a Shift A in edit mode, and then add another cube. And then we're going to scale it way down, and then we're going to scale Shift Z, so we're not scaling it on the Z, and we're going to kind of scale this up a little bit. And we're going to go to G, Shift Z again, so that won't move it on the Z. So we're going to just kind of try and place this on here. So we're going to scale this on the Y a little more, and then GX a little more. And if we look at the photo, we can see that the top will overlap. As we can see here, the top will overlap on this edge here, maybe not on the back, but we might be changing a few details of this back part here. So we do want it to overlap, and obviously we need this to scale it on the Z to kind of get that to an appropriate size. So we can probably scale it just up slightly. Try not to get too perfectionist, but then we can select. Why are we not letting me select? Oh, back to this. Alright, so we can select this, and then we can do GX just slightly and pop that out. So now we have two legs, and the side is slightly popped out. And I think in relation to the top, the legs are too thick. So I think what we'll do is we can shift select any one face on both of those and hit Control L, and that will select linked. And then we can scale it Shift Z, and it will scale. It'll actually scale them in all directions. So what we can do is change it to, I believe, local. Oh, that won't. Oh, go to global, and we need to scale it around individual origins. There we go. Individual origins over there. Scale Shift Z, and that will scale both of them down individually without scaling the entire selection. And it looks like they might be a little bit too wide apart. Yep. So what we're going to do, Control L, we're going to scale this along the Y, and I'm going to say something, scale along the X, something like that might work. So we're going to select these again, Shift click, Control L, and then scale them along the Y. After we change to bounding box center, scale along the Y, and then GX to move them in slightly. Alright, we'll call it good before I get too perfectionist. So we're going to tab into this, we're going to Control R to create a loop cut, and then we're going to right click to immediately deselect that, and then we're going to hit Z and go to wireframe mode. Hit A few times, double click A in rapid succession, and then we're going to hit C to bring up the circle select, and we're going to select all that. We're going to hit X and then delete the vertices. Not sure how those got. Oh, I got to be in vertices select mode, C select, and then middle mouse click to deselect, and then we're going to delete those vertices. Then we're going to hit Z and go back into solid mode. And then this is going to be our half. We're going to use mirror modifying for a few reasons. For something simple like this, usually you could get away without using mirror modifying. But we're going to show you kind of a few tricks with UV unwrapping that will help with much more complex objects that you will be using mirror modifying it with. So let's go ahead and take a look back here, and we notice that this is actually a little bit cockeyed, so we'll probably be moving that out just slightly, and then we'll be adding this bar in here. So we can easily go to face select, select that, GX, and just move it out slightly. Alright, next we're going to be adding the crossbar, so if we go back to the cursor here, put it in, say about there, and then make sure we're in edit mode, hit Shift A, and then we're going to add a cylinder. And remember, we're making this for games, so 32 vertices here is pretty unacceptable for a low poly object, which is what we're making. So we're going to do this down to about 12. And then we're going to scale, and then rotate on the X, 90, scale some more. And normally, as you get more experience, you would automatically start deleting these because they would be hidden geometry. We'll cover a couple ways to kind of discover it later, so we won't be deleting all these. We'll be kind of saving some of that for later. Since this will be embedded inside of the mesh here, we don't want to have extra topology in there that we don't actually need. So we need to make sure to kind of purge all of these. And if the chair is always going to be on the floor, you could technically purge these bottoms as well. But if your chair ever has physics and is going to get knocked around or anything, then of course that could become exposed, which means you have to be careful about that. But we will be deleting these tops in here to kind of get that geometry out of the way. So let's go back into solid and all right, and we're going to GY to move that along the Y, and I'm doing Shift Alt to select the entire ring here. Shift plus Alt plus left mouse, and then GY. All right, and so let's do Control L to select this whole thing. Then we're going to Shift or S, then Shift Y. That means it won't scale on the Y at all. And we're going to make this a little bit smaller. Then we're going to do GX to move it just a little bit over. And I think we'll probably pull this back just slightly. Pull it back again. Alright, so bar is probably fairly good now. We'll move it up just a twinge, I think. Alright. And that would help with that. Now you'll notice on here, if you look closely, it's all sharp ridges, and we can change that to smooth shading, which is what would make that so if we right click on the face context menu, we can do shade smooth, and voila, you'll now notice that it looks like a smooth bar all around. It doesn't have any of those sharp edges. So any questions, I guess? Make sure I haven't seen any questions in the chat unless my program is frozen, but if there's any questions at this time, make sure to post them. So currently we have the bottom, remember, will be completely mirroring this, so everything will get mirrored to the other side. We do need to add kind of the baseboards in here, and then the back. So what we'll start with is by grabbing the cursor, and then grabbing the cursor, then selecting this tab, and then deselect everything, Shift A to add another cube, and then of course scale it way down, and then we're going to scale it on the X till it's maybe about that, and then we're going to go GY, and remember we would probably cut these, but we'll be kind of dealing with that later. So GY, and that will bring it into here, and if we look at the wireframe we can see that's fairly high up, so what we'll probably do is GZ. And so for overlap, like I've said, if you have overlap, it's not a big deal. If you don't have overlap and like this is actually below the surface, then that's kind of a pain, and definitely wouldn't recommend it. But if you're overlapping, with a small amount like this, not a big deal at all. The only problem is if you're overlapping a large amount, you're actually cutting down on your texture space. So you want to try and keep these overlaps to as small of a thing as possible. So we would probably drop that right down to there. So probably should do the same with this one. And I should have done both of those at the same time with a shift select, just because when it comes to UV unwrapping, a lot of it is made easier if things are exactly the same size, for duplicate kind of areas. So now that we have that, we'll grab this and we'll do a GY and we'll pop that over to there. And I just want to slightly drop that down. So there's baseboard 1. And remember, that'll be duplicated over. Now we just need the front and back baseboards. So here's where you have a few options. So I could Shift D, right click G, X, move that out, rotate around the Z by 90, and GY, pull this over to the front. And you have to assume, and I'm not sure if this is right or not, that this is perfectly square. So technically, if you have the exact same size all the way around, it should look correct. But sometimes those things, you go with what looks better instead of what might be most accurate. So we have a few options here. Like you said, we want to mirror this, but this is completely, we'd have to try and somehow mirror this exactly right. And there's a few ways we can do it via clipping and the mirror modifier and stuff like that to try and get it accurate. We can also, and maybe we'll do that one, we can also do Control R to put a loop cut in, and we'll kind of move this over, and then we'll do Shift Tab, we'll turn on snapping, and we're going to snap to an edge. And so we can do, we're going along the x-axis, and we're going to do GX, and we're going to snap it directly to this edge so that we know that we are exactly in line here. And then we can go into Z, go into wireframe, go into vertex select, hit the A key a few times, double tap A, then hit the C to do circle select and select those 4, hit X and delete the vertices there. And then we know that this is pretty much exactly aligned here. So, and like I said, I'm overlapping all this slightly. Technically, if you really wanted to get precise, you could snap all of these vertices directly to the floor here, to the face, I should say, here, and that wouldn't be a problem since they are directly snapped. But we just needed to make sure that this was directly snapped here. So, and of course we need a back plate, so we can select any vertice there, Control L, and then we can do a Shift D, right click GY, and kind of move it over here. And now technically we could have done a double mirror and actually only modeled this part of it, but actually I think it would have been easier. It's easier the way we did it, because if you did a double mirror, mirrored that, and then mirrored the other side as well, things can get a little bit complex, but some people do that. So, but now as you can see, we have the front, back, side, and we do know that they will be perfectly equal. They should be exactly equal, or very close to, I should say, because we did snap it slightly back, but it should be fairly close. So, and it looks like that's still, no, that's in there. We're good. Okay. So now we can take a look at our photo here, and we can see that we have a little bit of a backwards tilt once we get past this here, and that's definitely what I wanted to do. And we have 2 sidebars here, or back bars I should say, but other than that I think our bottom area is pretty much done. So as you're modeling, you're always trying to think of what's the most efficient way that I can use mirror modifiers, especially since mirror modifier will help you out a lot when you go to UV unwrap. So you're always thinking, what's the most efficient way for me to kind of get this done? So here is kind of an interesting one, because technically this is going to jog out and jog back. And to kind of cut into this. But I think what we're going to do, instead of cutting into this, we're actually just going to have that cut into the back of the back support. Artistic licensing. That's the nice part about creating 3D models. You can have some artistic license. So what we're going to do is we have snapping on. We're going to snap to a face, and we're going to Control R, and then move that up. Okay. So, and then GZ, and we're going to just snap it right to this face here. So we know that this is exactly snapped. And then let's see, we'll probably, I think I'll probably do another Control R. So Control R there, and we'll move this up a little bit, and we'll probably right there. Then what we're going to do is go into face select that face. We're going to extrude, and it's automatically going to extrude along that axis. And then we're going to give it a little bit of space here. That might be enough. Then we're going to do Control R here again as well, and then we're going to we're snapping it to the face, so we'll do GY, and then we'll snap it directly to this face. And then we'll extrude up past here, and then we'll do another Control R, and this time we're going to snap it to edge. So we're going to do GZ, and then we're going to snap it directly to that edge so that it's directly there. Then we're going to go over to face select, then we're going to extrude again and turn off snapping, and then GY, and you can hold the shift key to really kind of crank it in as much as you want here. So we're just looking to have a good thickness, since this will be our thickness going up and around. So probably that. So what we can do is select both of these, and then we can extrude, and then take a look and see if that is the thickness we're looking for. Not too bad on the thickness, I guess. Not too bad. Then we still have these two selected, so we're going to go GY, and we're going to tilt them back. So now we have tilted back area, and I think I want to slightly GZ these. Alright. Now we could also create and mirror the back things here, these two things, but that's almost more of a pain than it's worth, so usually I just add those in after we've mirrored. So if we kind of give it a once over and take a look at, like, you know, how does it look in comparison to this model? Maybe it's a little small. All right, but before we do all the, well, actually, let's just add the mirror modifier now. So we're going to add the mirror, and it's probably going to be off like that. So go into edit mode, select everything, GX, and that's going to kind of flip it, you know, all the way over so that it will be lined up. Now, one of the things once it's over like that, we want to turn on clipping then. That's the required thing here. So if we go GX, and then you notice it'll clip it no matter what the size is. So if we're kind of trying to figure out a good size, and that might not be horrible. we'll just have to add in the 2 here. Alright, and so what we will do is deselect everything so that we don't have anything selected. Grab the cursor, pop it here, and then we're going to add another cube. And of course scale it, scale it, scale it. Then we're going to scale it along the Y, and then probably scale it a little bit on the Z. And let's see, that might be too big. Scale a little bit on the Z. And then we're going to rotate it. And what you can do is rotate it on the X and then just try and match the same rotation by kind of looking at the line. So about right there. And then we can go to face select and then go GX, pop that in there, and then we can just do a simple Shift D, right click GZ, and then do a little bit more GZ, GX, or sorry, GY. Let's do a little bit more GX. Oh, get that out of the way so you can see the screencast keys. Alright, now we can kind of look and take a look and just see, like, this is kind of a, when you're doing artistic license, sometimes you got to realize that the choices you make can sometimes come off looking a little odd, so you're going to have to go back and fix them. And we could fix this in a few different ways. We could actually create a few side faces here to give it a more of a level, kind of a curved input there. I think we're going to leave it though, just because we're already at 10:30 and we have a long ways to go. So, so basically, this is going to be the mirrored part, and then we'll be joining these 2 bits in later. But before we apply this mirror modifier, once we're kind of satisfied with how everything looks as the chair, before we apply it, we want to start doing some of the UV unwrapping. Since anything we do for the UV unwrapping will be mirrored over, so that means you only have to do half the work. With a small model like this, it's actually not that big a deal, but if you're doing a large model, UV unwrapping half the model only, and then just applying the mirror modifier, and all that else gets unwrapped for you. That saves you a lot of time. So to kind of cover UV unwrapping, it's basically like, think of a Coke can. They store everything in flat sheets because it's a lot easier, and when they want to wrap that Coke can, or any can you can think of, they make one slice essentially, and you can usually find one area where everything was sliced and then wrapped around a cylinder. So UV unwrapping is basically just flattening everything down so that it can be textured via one flat image. So if we think of the Coke can analogy, always look for shapes like that. So in your object, the objective is to hide all of the cuts from the player. The player should not see, well, I mean, they will see cuts. It's just inevitable, but they should be disguised as best as possible. So if we use a Coke can analogy, this is a cylinder, same thing as a Coke can. So to do that, we just select one area. We know we just have to make, as long as we don't have the tops here, which we don't, we can do a simple Control E, and we can do Mark Seam. And we're doing it on the interior because it's less likely the player will see the interior edge of this. And so that's going to be our first cut. And actually, we do need to go back and said I was going to show you a little bit before we do UV unwrapping. We do have to clean the model. So the first thing we'll want to do is find any interior faces, and we did find one there. So what we're going to do is we're going to select just that, and then we're going to select similar by perimeter. And if we go to wireframe, it did select a few. That were similar, but we want to actually deselect those. And this one you can sort of see the edge there, but it is completely cut off by this here, so it should be firmly established there. So basically what we're going to do is hit X and then delete the faces. And then if we go into wireframe, we'll notice that the faces are gone for that. But we do want to select the interior ones there. So we select that one, and then we can go up here and go to select similar by perimeter. A lot of these are very similar. Let's see. We'll switch over to solid. And then we can just deselect the ones that are actually external. And that one is fine, again, because it's completely covered. This one, however, will need to be deselected. Then we go back into wireframe, and we can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 interior shapes. We can hit X and delete the faces. Go back over to solid. And looks like we managed to delete that, which we didn't want to do. So we're going to go ahead and go into there, and then Shift Alt left mouse. Oh, nope, let's not do that, because that has 2 there. You actually want to try and maintain polygons as much as possible. So select one vertex, then the other. Hit F, that will create a line there. And then we can just Shift Alt left. Nope, we can just Shift click all those, hit face, and then face like that. So we now have that all sewed back up. So now we kind of have to look and see what else might be. And we can see there that this is here. And like I said, it's usually easier if you're doing this as we go, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of an idea. So if we select perimeter there, looks like that won't find anything else, but we do know that this one does need to be grabbed. That one does need to be grabbed. So we'll be cutting those 3 out. So we hit X and delete the faces there. Alright, and looks like we managed to delete that face as well. So go back here, select face. Alright, and then let's see, what else might we have for interior faces? Looking good, I think, for the most part. And this is why it's always best to do it beforehand, because doing it afterwards is an absolute pain. So, but it looks like we are good to go. Well, let's see, what about that? Oh, that's covering part of that. So, all right, so we've kind of cleaned up the areas there. So what we're going to do next is, and we'll be doing some additional cleanup after we do the mirror modifier. We can remove doubles as well, just in case we didn't have any doubles that were removed, but it's always nice to remove those. So back to our UV editing. For a cylinder, it's fairly easy. You know, both ends are removed, so you just slice it right down the middle, and that rolls out flat. For boxes, things can get a little bit more complicated. So basically, you might think, well, for this here, I'll just unwrap here, do a slice here, then unwrap here as well. And that technically could work. The thing is, you'll be splitting this off into so many different edges so that the player will see a cut from here to here. And it's on a hard edge, so that part is good. but the player will see a cut from here to here and from here to here, although they really won't see that one. What if it were possible, and it would probably be even better, if you could have this edge flow continuously, so that if the player is looking at it, this would actually line up and only this would be cut from underneath. So, and you can, it's not something easy to think about. So you kind of have to do a lot of visualizations here. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually just making a cut here, making a cut here, then cutting the edge here, so that there will be a transition from the bottom side to the middle, but we will have this top here. And since I'm making these cuts here, this will actually flatten out. You'll see when we go to the UV editing part, this will slit it here, and that will flatten out this side, this side, this side, and all of these will be connected, and they will actually be able to view that continuously, and then that part which is hidden from the player will be different. So let's hit Control E and go to Mark Seam. Next off is these boxes here. Like I said, it's always nice if you can kind of hide that from the player, so you can always definitely make a cut here, since that will be hidden from the player usually. And of course, for these edges here, you can make a cut and make a cut all the way around the edge and just kind of separate that out. That's usually the best. And then you might be able to get away with 2 cuts here, but we'll do some experimentation once we get to that. So we have a cut there, a cut there. We're going to do Control E, mark the seams there. And these are just the minimum amount of cuts we'll need. We'll be covering it more in depth later. And for this is going to be a toughie because the back of the chair, well visible, along with the front and the side. So you have to try and do your best to find a good area to cut. So we're doing a Shift-Alt to kind of select all that in a row. Shift-Alt to select all that in a row. And then we'll probably want to cut it maybe right there, since that's fairly hidden. And UV unwrapping can be an art form, which means, you know, a lot of testing and then redoing, and you always got to think, so what am I cutting? So I'm cutting this entire, I want to cut this entire piece off, so I'm going to also slice around the edges here and here, just in case these would get entangled together, because I did cut off the interior, so it's possible that those would get UV unwrapped together. So we'll just mark the seam for now, and we can always do some testing later. So now I want to apply my mirror. Remember, that's always a big step. So alright, so for cleaning up the model, remember, it's all about your tri count, your poly count. So anything that's not needed cut-wise after you do your mirror modifier, you'll want to remove. And you might be tempted to think, well, do I need this cut? Well, yes, it does kind of separate where, because in our picture we had a straight area, then the cut, or then the back. So we do need this cut because we go straight up and then back. But from our mirror modifier, if we shift, oh, it's not going to pull it all the way across. Alright, so I just need to Shift Alt select this entire thing pretty much. This does nothing for us. It's left over from the mirror modifier, and it basically just separates an object that is entirely flat and all the way across. So you hit Control X, and Control X will dissolve that loop cut, essentially, although we didn't select all the way around. So the next thing is we Shift left mouse, Control J to join everything now that the mirror modifier is done. And then we can go in here and actually, let's go to wireframe, go to face, oh, we already have those two faces selected. What we're going to do is select similar, that's different. That's definitely not what I wanted. Let's try and just select one of the, oh, that's why I was an edge. Select. So select similar, let's try area. Nope. Right. I'm just going to do this manually since there's only 4 of them. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I have 4, we can hit X and delete the faces there. So that will just remove all of our interior geometry. And once again, we can select everything, go to vertex. Oh, that's technically not required, but remove doubles. Again, we have 0 vertices, but it's always nice to do that just in case you have some vertices that are having some problems. So back into solid mode. Alright, and as you can see, that is our current chair. It looks fairly decent. Let's see, hold on one sec. I think I just... Let me check something, guys. Alright. Alright, we're good. The next thing is UV unwrapping. So we definitely need a lot more work done on this model for UV unwrapping. We've only basically just got it started. So we're going to go to the UV editing tab up top here. And then we're going to select everything in our model. And you can see something's already UV unwrapped, and that's because when you add like a shift, if you go Shift A to add like a cylinder, those have their UV unwrappings already set. But we tend to redo those. So we